President Trump late today said there is no reason to invoke the Insurrection Act right now in Minneapolis, as small standoffs between protesters and ICE continue. The president also said he, quote, greatly respects Iran's theocratic regime for canceling executions of protesters. This as the death toll from the crackdown on street protests mounts. I left you to play baseball in a San Diego Padres uniform, and it was epically epic. We have some moving pictures, and there will be a recap. Hello, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. Welcome to the Takeout. It is very good to be back. Retro Padre mug keeping me company. We will return to that happy place known as Padre Fantasy Camp when we close out tonight's show. But while I was gone, as you well know, Minneapolis became an epicenter of choice for a Trump administration eager to make an example of a sanctuary city, bringing ICE forces in large numbers to enforce immigration laws with an intensity that has resulted in many arrests, 2 shootings, and the killing of a U.S. citizen, Renee Good. Tensions ripple through the city and reverberate across the country. Mistrust and suspicion color ICE enforcement actions. Federal police say they feel threatened, disrespected, and impeded. State and city authorities say they do not trust ICE investigations. They question the usefulness of their raids and consider their tactics overly aggressive and at times escalatory. Minneapolis has therefore become a prism through which the country and quite possibly the world now views what the Trump administration means by a zero-tolerance policy for undocumented status, what enforcement looks like en masse, and the boundaries, tactically and politically, the Trump administration is willing to test in its zeal to surmount sanctuary city policies, protests, and non-cooperation. For more on today's events in Minneapolis, we turn to Matt Gutman. Matt, set the scene for us.
Hey guys, including a mask.
Major, we are here outside the Whipple Federal Building. I'm going to have our cameraman, Jed, just point at that building. There's a lot of things happening there, including federal detentions of suspected migrants. And right behind me, you see this protest that has been here for days and days now. They sort of camp out here. There's food, there are placards, there's sleeping bags, heating hand warmers, and every hour or two from that gate emerge probably several dozen federal law enforcement officers and agents who sort of push back the crowd. We heard just moments ago they fired pepper balls into the crowd, pushed everybody back, then they recede. The idea is to try to allow enforcement officers to come and go from this building. But this is sort of the epicenter of the skirmishes that we've been seeing almost nightly on television at this point, Major. I would say that the unrest that we've heard about is certainly not playing out in many other parts of the city. It is mostly here in very select other locations.
Tell them how peaceful it's been.
Folks here reminding me that it has been peaceful, and that is what we've seen here. We have not seen violence really from either side in any significant way over the past 24 hours.
And Matt, there were some more details released today about how many shots were fired at Renee Good, who suffered death from those shots. What do we know?
Beat around the bush.
What we know is more about the gunshot wounds that she endured. According to a report put out by the Minneapolis Fire Department, it is understood that she had at least 2 wounds to the abdomen, another one to the arm, and another wound to the head. It's unclear if all of them were gunshot wounds or where exactly all those bullets hit. But we do know that after she slammed into that pole, she was there for a number of minutes. Medics were there within 5 minutes or so. They tried to resuscitate her and worked on reviving her, but she succumbed to her wounds and was pronounced dead about 45 minutes later at a hospital. I think what we didn't know is that the severity of the wounds, not only to the head, but also multiple gunshot wounds to the chest and the arm as well, Major.
Matt, the president said today that city officials have lost control of Minneapolis. You're there. You've described the scene there. Is the rest of the city in a status of no control?
No, I would not say that. We spoke to the chief of police here, earlier today, and he said, listen, this area that you're seeing right here, Major, this is federal jurisdiction. We're on federal land right now. Police can't enforce anything here. And we have not seen any significant unrest anywhere else in the city except for where immigration enforcement actions are being taken place. And those aren't happening all the time. So I would say that this is not a city that is out of control, at least from what we and our team have been able to see here in any way. And there are already 3,000 federal law enforcement, possibly more, who are here in the city trying to enact DHS policy right now in finding migrants. That's 5 times more than the entire Minneapolis Police Department. So just a really significant number of federal law enforcement. It's unclear if they've succeeded or, Major, how long they intend to stay here.
Matt Gutman contesting with the snow, the wind, and some loud and vocal participants in today's events just outside the federal building in Minneapolis. I thank you, sir, very, very much. I want to bring in Minneapolis City Council member Oreen Chowdhury. Great to have you with us. Just for my audience's benefit, to know where you're coming from, do you believe there is a legitimate role in any time in the city of Minneapolis for ICE enforcement actions?
I think the way that ICE has behaved and the recklessness in which they treat our immigrant neighbors, our community members, citizens, they have completely eroded their legitimacy. I think ICE is being used by this administration to create mass harm and fear, violation of people's constitutional rights, and I find it illegitimate. And it is absolutely shameful. It's a shameful period in our country. And Minneapolis, we are really struggling, but all of our neighbors are coming together and we're holding tight to each other and we're standing up for our immigrant neighbors. We are making sure that we're keeping each other safe.
As you well know, the nation will mark Martin Luther King Jr. holiday on Monday. What role, if any, do you believe civil disobedience ought to play in what's going on vis-a-vis the community in Minneapolis and federal immigration police?
It is our duty as Americans to use our First Amendment rights, to stand up to injustice, and to hold our government accountable. And that's exactly what Minnesotans and Minneapolis residents are doing. That's what our press is doing. We are bringing light to the fact that this invasion by ICE is sowing chaos, is harming everyday people. We're seeing kids at school fearful that ICE is going to come onto school property. Just that same day when Renee Good was murdered, I saw at a high school in my district, ICE officers descend onto public school property and fire chemical irritants in the direction of teenage kids. Just the other day, when another person was shot in North Minneapolis, there was a family driving home from their kid's basketball game, and a flashbang went into their car, and their car was filled with the gas that they were putting out there, and their child was harmed. So it now is absolutely a time marked in history where Minneapolis residents and Minnesotans are speaking up, and to the nation, this is your moment to speak up as well, because if it can happen here, it can happen across the country. And the federal government is trying to make an example of us, but we are going to continue to resist. We're going to use our First Amendment right. We're going to peacefully assemble, and we're going to take care of each other. And we're going to say that ICE needs to get out of our city and our state immediately and needs to be held accountable for violating the rule of law, for violating the Constitution.
Councilmember Chowdhury, federal immigration officials say they are being threatened, impeded, and disrupted in their pursuit of carrying out federal immigration law. How do you respond to that?
How I respond to that is we have 3,000 ICE agents in our city streets indiscriminately stopping people for the color of their skin. I'm a daughter of immigrants. I'm a United States citizen. And yet today, as a sitting councilwoman, I have a whistle around my neck and a passport in my coat pocket to prove that I am a citizen, to prove that I should not be arrested. And for people without status, they are being targeted and taken without any due process. Their homes are being broken into and families are being torn apart. ICE agents and the federal government are the ones that are being reckless. this is not who our nation should be. This is not what Minneapolis is. And we were peaceful. We were taking care of each other. Crime was down in our city before they came in. And now, at the top of the year, we have had 4 shootings, and 2 of them have been because of ICE. And so any allusion to allusion that ICE is saying that our community is causing mass disruption and that they're the root of violence is absolute propaganda. The root of violence is ICE, as evidenced by the murder of Renee Good, as evidenced by pregnant women being dragged out of their car, as evidenced by United States citizens being detained and then mocked by ICE agents and saying slurs about Renee Good and saying you should have learned from that lesson.
You use the term, Madam Councilwoman, murder in relation to Renee Good. That is a specific legal term. Why did you use that?
Because I believe it is murder. There should absolutely be a process and an investigation that's independent, which I wholeheartedly believe. But as a citizen, as a council member, what I saw with my own eyes and the information that has come out about the shots and fired at Renee Good, it was an intentional killing in my view. And I believe it to be murder, and so do Minneapolis residents, many Minneapolis residents and many Minnesotans. And I don't use that term lightly.
Before I let you go, Council Member Chowdhury, sketch out what you hope will happen this weekend, what you fear might actually happen.
I mean, I am fearful that ICE will continue to act with impunity and continue to hurt my neighbors. Right now, it's our moms, our public educators, members of our clergy, our imams that are out here trying to take care of each other, trying to alert each other of actions that could harm our neighbors. And I'm fearful that that will continue and that we will lose another life. And that is exactly why this needs to end. What gives me hope is that Minnesota is a cold place, but we have people here with warm hearts. And Minnesota Nice is absolutely a thing, but what we're seeing actively is Minnesota Grit. There has never been more solidarity between the people in our community. People are lending a hand out to make sure that families are fed, families are housed, that we are talking to each other, that we're checking in. And in a moment right now, as a city of Minneapolis, we're calling for an eviction moratorium because we want to make sure people don't get displaced in a time that feels and is an emergency. And so I'm grateful for the coming together. I know I will see more of that this next weekend, but I am fearful for the impunity and recklessness in which ICE agents act. And I ask other leaders across the nation to call for accountability, to call for ICE to leave Minnesota and other cities and states throughout the nation. And I thank the 50-plus Congress people that came to Minnesota today for a hearing in our Senate building to hear from our residents, to hear from our elected leaders about what's happening here.
Minneapolis City Council Member Oreen Chowdhury, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Moving to the White House, sources tell CBS News President Trump plans to pardon the former governor of Puerto Rico, Wanda Vazquez. She pleaded guilty last summer in a federal corruption case. Vazquez was arrested in relation to a bribery scheme tied to her 2020 campaign. She did endorse President Trump that same year. Her 2 co-defendants are also expected to receive pardons. With this and other news coming to us from the White House, we turn to Weijia Jiang on the North Lawn. Weij?
Hey, Major. So these 3 defendants, including the former governor Vazquez, were charged with bribery, conspiracy, and wire fraud, all tied to her 2022 campaign, as you mentioned. And the reason why it's raising some eyebrows is because one of her co-defendants' daughters donated $3.5 million to the pro-Trump PAC MAGA Incorporated. And so there is a question again about whether this is a pay-to-play situation, because in recent months we have seen other people who donated to the Trump campaign or as a big supporter of President Trump receive similar commutations or pardons. But the White House says that's not the case at all, pointing out that the investigation started just about 10 days after she endorsed President Trump. So they claim that she was the target of a political witch hunt and that this pardon is justified, Major.
Also today at the White House, the president met with some northeastern governors to talk about energy prices. What came of that?
So, Major, this is an attempt from the administration to balance two parts of the economy, in a very difficult way, a sign of the times, because as we talk about artificial intelligence, that requires data centers to fuel AI and all the searches that people are doing. And so on the one hand, they applaud the construction of new centers, but on the other hand, they are concerned about how that is already impacting rising energy costs. And so the governors of 4 states, we should say Republicans and Democrats alike, came together here to the White House to sign an agreement to try to push PJM, which is the largest electrical grid operator in the country, to hold an auction for power. And the idea is to get big tech companies to purchase more power so that they will also invest in more of these data centers and pay for power and use that billions to offset any cost that consumers would have to pick up, Major.
Weijia Jiang, North Lawn of the White House. Thank you so very much.
Sure.
Still to come on the Takeout, a bloody week of street protests in Iran. President Trump said today he convinced himself not to launch U.S. strikes against the regime. We will talk to an exiled journalist and activist about the state of unrest and where it might lead. Also, a bipartisan group of lawmakers flew to Denmark to lower the diplomatic temperature in the clash with the Trump White House over Greenland's future. Plus, I'm happily back at the family table. This past week, I stepped way out of my comfort zone and got a very small glimpse of the Major League Baseball experience, what I learned about baseball and life at San Diego Padres fantasy camp. The Takeout returns in 90 seconds. Welcome back to Takeout. It is very, very hard to get a clear picture, even a maybe blurry picture inside Iran right now because the government's internet blackout remains in place. On social media, meanwhile, President Trump claims that Iranian officials have canceled more than 800 scheduled hangings of protesters. The president later told reporters that that decision helped convince him not to launch U.S. military strikes inside Iran. Exiled Iranian journalist and human rights activist Masih Alinejad joins me now. Masih, how do you react to the president saying he greatly admires the theocratic regime in Iran's decision regarding future executions and the sense that many in the region do not want the United States militarily involved inside Iran?
To be honest, everyone welcome any decision to save the lives of those who were going to be executed. But in my opinion, the Islamic Republic knows it very well how to buy time. They have done this when it comes to negotiating with President Obama. They know how to buy time to rebuild, to recover. So now this is another case. When they promise that they are not going to execute protesters, that showed their fear. That showed that they understand the language of pressure. But this regime showed it years and years and years that they cannot be reformed. Killing is in the DNA of the Islamic Republic. I remember when the execution sentence of Navid Afkari went viral, President Trump reacted to that. He asked the Iranian regime to stop executing Navid Afkari. They did the same. They actually waited. But then what happened? They hanged Navid Afkari, the Iranian well-known athlete. So in my opinion, and the opinion of millions of Iranians who know this regime very well, that they are trying to buy time to rebuild and recover, and they will come back with more brutality. This regime cannot be reformed. They cannot change their behavior.
Let me ask you about this. The U.S.-based human rights activist news agency Friday put the death toll so far in the crackdown from the regime in Iran against protesters at 2,797. Does that sound to you, Masih, as a credible number?
It's beyond that. My sources from inside Iran, thanks to Starling, they're saying that they are witnessing massacre unfolding in their own cities. Only in Tehran, people say 12,000. In Mashhad, massacre took place. In Isfahan, in many other cities, in Karaj, people are witnessing how people are being slaughtered, being butchered in front of their eyes. In my opinion, the numbers go higher and higher. So this is not a statistics. It breaks my heart when we talk about people like a number, like statistics. We're talking about 4 family members from one family. All of them have been killed. And the only person who is alive saying that he will take back to the streets. This is the people of Iran now. They are determined to end this regime. But believe me, with empty hands, they're not going to win this battle against a brutal regime. So now Iranians believe that a targeted military action against those who ordered massacre can help lives, can save lives. Otherwise, they will go home by home, their houses, they storm into houses and they arrest people. They shoot people who have satellite. They storm into hospital and they're finished, they injured. They go in different streets and when people are in their balcony, they shoot them. So family members are being warned that they should not talk to the media. Many of the family members telling us that they have to pay money to get the dead bodies of their beloved one back to bury them. This is the situation in Iran. I myself, I don't know what is happening to my family. No landline, no cell phones, absolutely darkness. Totally communications blackout. This is a form of torture for millions of Iranians living in exile.
I've got less than a minute, Masi, but you mentioned Starlink a second ago. What role, if any, is that playing in creating at least some insight or communication method for those inside Iran right now?
I believe that the free world, Europeans, they should put pressure on the Iranian regime against the digital blackout. You know, the people are living in darkness, and the only solution is just putting pressure, shut down the embassy, or kicking out the diplomats. Then they will send a signal to Islamic Republic that the free world is not going to appease a barbaric regime. Believe me, this regime treated their own people like ISIS, so they should be treated like ISIS.
Masi Alinejad, I thank you for your time and your expertise very much.
Thank you so much.
Today, a congressional effort to calm tensions over Greenland. We'll speak with the former ambassador to Denmark about President Trump's persistent, that is a way to describe it, talk of taking over that country, meaning Greenland, and what it could mean next. You're watching The Takeout. Welcome back to The Takeout. Thanks for hanging out with us. Here's a look at what else we and now you are watching this evening. Tyler Robinson, the accused killer of Charlie Kirk, back in court today in Utah. His attorneys are seeking to get a prosecutor dropped from the case over an alleged conflict of interest. A prosecutor's son was in the crowd at Utah Valley University when the assassination occurred. He then texted his father, quote, Charlie got shot. In an affidavit, the Utah County Attorney's Office argues this incident does not rise to the level of a conflict of interest because the son did not actually witness the shooting, but was instead looking around at the crowd. We will keep an eye on this legal proceeding and bring you updates as necessary. CBS News immigration reporter Camilo Montoya Galvez has new exclusive reporting that finds the number of detainees currently in ICE custody has reached a record high, about 73,000. It is, that number, an 84% increase compared to this same time 1 year ago, near the beginning of President Trump's second term. That 73,000 number, well, it's expected to go up. The Trump administration has long said it has plans to be able to detain upwards of 100,000 people at any given time. A bipartisan group of lawmakers is looking to ease tensions with Greenland and Denmark as President Trump continues to call for the United States, one way or the other, to take control of that Danish territory. 11 members of Congress visited Denmark today to be both their prime minister and Greenland's. The congressional delegation told them majority of Americans do not support the president's efforts to take Greenland, and that dialogue would be an improved method to calm things down. Let's listen.
Greenland needs to be viewed as our ally, not as an asset. And I think that's what you're hearing with this delegation.
Part of the point of this trip is to have a bipartisan group of members of Congress listen respectfully to our friends, our trusted allies and partners.
I want to turn now to Rufus Gifford. He was the U.S. ambassador to Denmark during the Obama administration. Mr. Ambassador, great to have you with us. Look, I have discussed on this program with others, there is a strategic importance of Greenland. It is nearly 4 times the size of Texas. It is where the Atlantic and Arctic Oceans meet. There are more air and sea patrols conducted there between Greenland, Iceland, the UK, Norway. It's significantly geographically part of what NATO seeks to accomplish. All of that is true. But what the president is doing seems to have rattled many cages, and possibly unnecessarily so.
That's exactly right, Major. I think, first of all, everything you articulate is right, and something Americans have known for decades now, frankly. The challenge here, and the reason why I think this policy is just so reckless and also completely sort of forgets history, how NATO works, et cetera. In that sense, it's actually quite clueless as well. The national security argument is a real one. Russians have built up their national security presence in the Arctic over the course of the last decade, and the allies, meaning NATO, the other Arctic countries, have scaled back, and we have led the way there. We used to have 17 military bases on Greenland. We now have had 1. That's both administrations, including Trump 1, didn't make a choice to reinvest in Greenland, even though we knew we could. But this is a very, very difficult time for this alliance. And I would make the argument emphatically that this sort of hostile relationship with NATO does nothing other than empower our adversaries here, Major, meaning there is no one who is licking their chops more than China and Russia. So in fact, Trump says that this is good for American national security. It's just the opposite. This weakens American national security.
Mr. Ambassador, the administration and the president have said this week that you only care about something you own, meaning America has to own Greenland for this to work. But I was looking at some statistics in the Wall Street Journal today. There are 128 U.S. military bases around the world in 51 countries. Almost not one of them is owned. We have a pattern and practice of participating and negotiating with host countries and then using that negotiating platform as a means to project our various military and strategic interests.
That's right, sir. And this is the thing that drives me crazy about this, because we're talking about 2 of our best allies here in the Danes and the Greenlanders. Who have obviously been marching in lockstep with us on every foreign policy issue. They've fought and died alongside U.S. troops. They would love nothing more than to sit across the table from American diplomats and work at a deal. And whether that is for additional military investment in Greenland, whether that is a relationship regarding mining, rare earth minerals, all of this. But it is simply absurd to say for us to achieve those goals, we need to acquire Greenland. It makes no logical sense. And it makes no logical sense. And then in doing so, we blow up, and I really do believe that is the term that should be appropriately used, the best alliance the modern world has ever seen, which is NATO. So this is just so detrimental across the board.
Mr. Ambassador, there was another news event today that you might find related. The Prime Minister of Canada announced a new trade deal between Canada and China and said that Canada will reassess its relationship with the United States and grow tighter with China, something that I think would have 2 years ago been almost inconceivable to Canadians, the Chinese, and the United States.
Yeah, I saw that, Major, and I'm honestly still processing it. I think you're exactly right. I mean, if there is not a better example of the Trump, what I would call reckless and haphazard tariff policy, backlashing against the United States, our interests, American people, the American consumer, there's probably no better example than Canada going to China. I think we're going to start to see a lot more of it. Look, Major, I think this is so much about my favorite word in the English language, which is the word trust. We have spent decades, and I believe that American diplomacy has been such a great force for good over the decades. We have spent decades earning the trust, in particular of our NATO allies, but in most countries around the world. It's extraordinary the rate at which that trust has eroded. And we're going to have to do a lot of work to build that trust back.
Ambassador Rufus Gifford. Mr. Ambassador, I appreciate your time very, very much. Thank you.
My pleasure, Major. Anytime.
Affordable Care Act tax credits, some call them subsidies. Well, they've expired. Now President Trump, perhaps in reaction, putting forth what he calls a new health care plan. Our political panel will discuss what's in it, what's been left out, and what the political effect might be. That's next, right here on The Takeout. Welcome back. President Trump announced an outline of a long-awaited health care plan this week. It involves cash payments to Americans to deal with their health care costs as they see fit. I want to bring in our political panel, Mark Short, Republican strategist, former Chief of Staff to Vice President Mike Pence, Mo Alethi, Democratic strategist, former Communications Director at the DNC. Mark, I'll get to you on immigration for a second, but on health care, this is not a plan to replace the Affordable Care Act. It has many long-discussed Republican ideas. How would you evaluate its political and legislative future?
I don't know there are many Republican ideas in this, Major. I mean, let's start with the fact that, I was a Hill staffer 15 years ago when Obamacare passed. And in addition to being promised you could keep your doctor if you like them, you were also promised to lower costs. Why do we need subsidies if it was going to lower costs? It's been an incredible failure. That's why it's like costs are through the roof.
Access has been increased, but costs have been going up.
They were promised costs would come down. What we're doing now as Republicans is saying, hey, you know what? We're going to compete with Democrats with who can give more subsidies.
Who can give more money?
Yeah, who can give more money? You're always going to lose that against Democrats. They're going to give out more taxpayer dollars than we are. The plan includes price controls on drugs, which has been a priority for Democrats for quite a long time.
White House now embraces them dramatically.
Absolutely, this White House does. But it's, again, they're continuing toward populism, big government. It's not offering any sort of Republican free market
or conservative
reforms.
Free market approaches.
Correct.
So you're down on it. Do you think the Senate or House Republicans will give it even a look?
Sure. I mean, I think
because it's obligatory. They have.
Well, he continues to have a lot of support, and I think there's a lot of Republicans in a midterm cycle who are concerned about affordability, and so they're going to go along with the notion that subsidies is the right path. I just wish instead they'd be offering, here are solutions from a different perspective to lower costs, as opposed to trying to compete with who can give out more money.
Maybe we'll hear from a gentleman named Mike Pence about that in the not-too-distant future. Mo, what's your sense?
I love having this conversation with Mark because I can just sit back and watch, a real conservative take
Right, in some sort of semi-agony.
But the subsidies that just expired have resulted in people's costs going up by, on average, $7,000, I think $7,500. President's plan is to, rather than give the subsidies, to just write a check to people, I assume with his name written, signed in big bold, right?
Featured.
Instead of to give it to health insurance companies. But it's not lowering costs.
But $2,000, right? So people are still going to be paying more. That $2,000, which is the number I keep hearing Republicans floating, no guarantee that people will put it into the healthcare system.
Right.
They could spend it on anything.
Right.
For a lot of younger people, they may choose to drop out of the healthcare system, use that $2,000 to pay for rent.
Spin the health roulette wheel, which young people sometimes do.
Right. And so people then get pushed out of the market, which causes premiums to go up even higher for those who are still
in the market are less healthy by comparison.
That's
Mark,
right.
I want to ask you about immigration. When you were with Vice President Pence, first term of the Trump administration, were the kind of things we are seeing now discussed and quashed, or are we seeing a kind of intensity on immigration enforcement on the interior of our country that even you didn't expect to see?
I think there are some in the White House that always favored this approach, Major.
In the first term.
I do think it's different, though. I think that our nation had an open borders for 4 years during the Biden administration. And so the number of illegal immigrants has swelled. And I think that ICE has an incredibly difficult job. And it's made more so difficult when there are Democrats who are encouraging these sorts of protests. Having said all of that, Major, I think there is a difference between saying we're going to go after the worst and the criminals versus saying, let's go pick, a city where we know it's going to be inflamed to make an issue. And I think there
is something inherently provocative about that.
Absolutely.
And going into high schools and going into businesses.
And I think there's even, reports out today that the president's grown uncomfortable with some of these visuals. And so, I think that there's often too much criticism from the left, not necessarily Mo, but from the left about our ICE agents who have an incredibly difficult job.
Fascists and
they're doing a law enforcement duty, and there's too many politicians trying to get in their way. But at the same time, there is a way of saying we're going to go after the worst of the criminals, as opposed to, as you say, let's find a sanctuary city where we know this is going to get inflamed.
Mo, evaluate what's going on in Minneapolis.
It's terrible. It's tragic. And it is part of what I believe is the strategy by the White House. Look, Democrats, they missed this argument during the last election.
During the Biden administration.
Right? They're too slow to acknowledge that people had very real concerns, which then opened the door for an overreaction, an over-response by the other side. This president likes to flex muscle. He likes to show strength, whether it's domestically or internationally. And the chaos is part of the strategy.
I want to ask you if Democrats are still missing this. I want to play a soundbite from the Gavin Newsom podcast. His guest was Ben Shapiro. Let's run it.
Your press office tweeted out that it was state-sponsored terrorism, which, I mean, Governor, I do have to ask you about that.
Yeah.
That sort of thing makes our politics worse.
Yeah.
I mean, it does.
Yeah.
I mean, our ICE officers obviously are not terrorists.
Yeah.
A tragic situation is not state-sponsored terrorism.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Well, he's retracting and backing away from something his own press office put out.
Look, the American people are actually starting to sour on what they're seeing, right? They are souring on even ICE. I saw a poll recently that showed that for the first time ever, a very slim majority of people actually support abolishing ICE. Now, I don't support abolishing ICE, but I do support real reform. I think the more people are upset about what they are seeing, the likelier we are to have reform and maybe even scale back some of these policies. Democrats don't take your foot off that gas.
Mark, you've got 30 seconds. Mark, you got 30 seconds. You get the final word.
We talked about the overreaction. I think there's already some Democrats calling for another government shutdown over the next funding bill to say we're going to zero out ICE, which would be a total overreaction. I think on this particular podcast, I think it's a challenge the governor's going to have, is that he has a large support among those who believe he's anti-Trump, but trying to placate a lot of conservative talk show hosts, he ends up getting in trouble with the left, too.
Mark Short, I promise you the last word. You get it? Mo Alethe, it's great to have you both here. Please come back.
Thanks, Major.
The official start of baseball season, well, that's not for a couple of months, but I got a head start. And in the process, well, yes, indeed, fulfilled a lifelong dream. I'll take you through my week playing in the Padres fantasy camp. That's next, right here on The Takeout. Welcome back. As you know, I left the show more than a week ago for San Diego Padres fantasy camp at the team's spring training complex in Peoria, Arizona. I brought someone with me. He joins me now, our D.C. Bureau managing editor, and before that, my producer for more than a decade, Arden Fari. Arden played baseball in college, played it very well, and quite fortunately, we were drafted onto the same team. Even better, our team made it to Fantasy Camp's championship game, played on the stadium field where the Padres play their spring training games. We're not going to bury the lead. We won the championship. All the other Fantasy Camp teams played before us and were therefore watching the championship game. And early in that game, Arden, playing shortstop, made this sensational play.
It's gonna drop, 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 it's gonna drop.
So, Arden, we're going to do a little Scott Van Pelt with all due deference paid to the master of describing and interacting with a great athlete, describing a great play. So, Arden, walk us through that play.
Sure. So I was at shortstop. It was the fourth inning. The ball was hit, obviously, in the air. And
Where was the sun?
I look up, and it's right in the sun. I mean, I couldn't see anything. So I saw where it had been hit, and I saw sort of where the path I thought the ball might take, and I just started running to a spot. And about halfway, maybe three-quarters of the way down, as the ball was coming down, I guessed right. And I saw, oh, there it is. I can get it. I saw it. I took 2 more steps and just reached, and you saw the fortunate result.
But for most of the time in pursuit of that fly ball, you did not see it.
I didn't see it at all. No, I was running to try to get to where I thought it was going to go.
Which is what you're taught. Run to where you think the ball is going to be.
It was the only chance I had, It was the only chance I had.
And we won that game 9-4 against a team that had not lost a game at fantasy camp. It was a huge upset.
It was. But more than that.
More than that.
How fun was that?
The greatest. It was more fun than I imagined it would be. And you and I've been talking about this for the better part of 4 years. And I had expectations because I knew some people who had participated before. But midway through day one, just taking grounders from former major leaguers and getting a little instruction from them, it had already exceeded my expectations, and every day got better after that.
And winning is always great, even if the stakes are
very low,
not particularly high or non-existent. But getting out there, getting to play in the sun on these beautiful fields for 6 days straight, and being with great guys who are there to do the same thing as you, and women, men and women.
Yes.
What a thrill. It was so much fun.
I really want to say this about the former Padres who served as coaches, 2 coaches per team. They could, if they were so inclined, mail it in emotionally. And no one would complain about that. Just being around them would be enough, but they don't mail it in. They are dialed in on the instruction side. They're dialed in on the conversation side. They want to be there. And when you feel that a former major leaguer, someone you looked up to, in my case, someone like Trevor Hoffman or Jake Peavy or Mark Loretta or Tim Flannery or Mark Grant, Greg Vaughn are there, Gary Templeton, and they're talking to you as if you are a peer. When you know you are not a peer, it's remarkable.
Yeah, it's really cool. And they're just regular guys in so many ways, but also you know them from watching them on TV, that they're anything but regular when they step onto the field.
That's one of the plays I made at first base.
Oh, that was a good swing. Look at that swing and that hustle. That was early in the camp when you could still
I could still run.
Yeah. That was a nice play, too. Sorry about that throw. It was a little wide at first.
That's all right. That's all right. Arden, thank you. Thank you for going with me. Thank you for playing. Thank you for being part of the championship.
You're a good teammate and colleague.
I'm a hard trier. I'm a hard trier. And I want to say this. For the video, we thank Mauricio Cota Corrales of KFMB CBS Channel 8 in San Diego. And for the stills you saw, we thank Time Stood Still Photography. Leaving this show for more than a week was, let's just say it, selfish. It was a deeply personal indulgence. But I learned something that I will share with you that transcends what I did. Play baseball in the sun for 6 days straight. Here is what I learned, and I want you to listen to me. You know there is something you have always wanted to do. I'm here to tell you, do it. Whatever it is. A museum you have to see, a stream you need to fish, a mountain you need to climb, a historic site, a ballet, architecture you crave, a wonder of the world that beckons, a concert you've never found time for. Whatever it is, do it. Start planning and do not put it off. I know something will come up. Something always came up that kept Arden and me from fantasy baseball camp. Do not let that happen. If you need to save and scrimp, as many players I met at camp had to attend, save and scrimp. I know now, waiting to do what you always wanted to do deprives you of a life force inside you. That spirit, once released, will make you a different person, a better person. Whatever it is inside you that you've always wanted to do, go. Go. Damn it, go. Happy Friday, everyone. This is The Takeout. Relentlessly curious, reliably civil, occasionally clever. The Daily Report, coming up next.